Thanks for joining me on episode 713 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Bob Loddick from Seed Time, and I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to grow your money like a seed is key to learning God's way of handling money. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
And what's more, as they begin to gain some traction, as they begin to move forward, then it gives them a little bit of hope, and then they can see a little further. They can understand a little better. They can get a little bit more done. And they can even see a little bit more of their why, because they begin to recognize that there is a way out of this.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about impacting the world by stewarding your time, I talk with you about why, without hope, productive use of your time is hard, how using your time well can actually give you hope, and why what we do with our time is important when it comes to hope.
As we talk about stewarding your time, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without just taking too long? Turns out you can. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show just that quick. If you enjoy the show when you are ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon.
Hope is one of those things that we all sort of know what it means, but we've never probably really thought about the formal definition. We've never really thought about what it is. We simply know how it feels when we have hope and when we don't. You know, the truth is, hope affects our use of time a tremendous amount. I don't know about anyone else, but whenever I've had periods where my hope has been down, where I haven't really been able to think about my goals, I haven't felt like I had agency or control of my life, I wasn't able to see a path forward. When I feel like I have lost my way a little bit, then it always becomes harder to figure out, what do I do? What should be the most important thing to do? And often that's when I find myself focusing on little things, focusing on the things that I can control, that I feel the most productive doing. Even if those things aren't necessarily really important tasks, just being able to step in and check something off the list and say, I've done it, begins to make me feel better. And that's not all bad, but at times that can end up trapping you in just doing busy work. Because when you've lost hope, it's hard to recognize what it is that you need to do to begin to gain progress, to begin to move forward. Instead, oftentimes the little things become all you can focus on. Or even worse, you begin to even lose sight of those little things because, you begin to step forward and say, hey, I don't even know what to do. So I begin to shut down and do nothing at all. It's easy to waste time with either just pure entertainment or fall into a loop where you begin to just sleep or do nothing or do simple things. And maybe now it begins to pile up and it can turn into a true depression as well, where you get behind on even just the daily task like showering and those sorts of things. The truth is there's a feedback loop here, because when you fall into those traps and begin to lose sight of what to do, stepping forward and getting a few things done actually can begin to make you feel like you have hope again. It can begin to make you feel productive again. It can begin to give you some energy. And as well, spending some time on things like self-care, like gratitude journals, like other activities that we're going to talk about on Saturday Night Special, can begin to inject hope into your life. Even physical exercise can be doing that. So it's important when you begin to get into those hopeless times that you spend some energy on spending time on things that give you self-care. It's also important that you spend some time on things that give you energy as opposed to things that drain your energy. If you're an introvert, you need to spend some time by yourself. If you're an extrovert, you need to spend some time with others. No matter what, you need to find those things that inject energy into your life. This is also where sometimes therapy or spending time with coaching or other things that give you positive energy can be helpful. See, the truth is what we do with our time affects our hope, and what hope we have affects what we do with our time. So if the negative energy begins to develop and spin forward, then it becomes harder and harder and harder to actually spend time doing the things that give us energy. It begins to be harder to spend time on the things that are actually productive. It begins to be harder to do anything because you get trapped in that mire of hopelessness. That's the reason why one of the first things that almost happens almost every time, if I'm coaching someone that's got some challenges, that's got some difficulty going on in their life, one of the first things I have to do is inject hope into that. Because the truth is that hope is what gives them the energy to move forward. And without that hope, it doesn't matter what tools or what practices or what ideas I inject into their life, because they're not going to be able to do them. They can't see forward enough. And what's more, as they begin to gain some traction, as they begin to move forward, then it gives them a little bit of hope, and then they can see a little further. They can understand a little better. They can get a little bit more done. And they can even see a little bit more of their why, because they begin to recognize that there is a way out of this. And it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be simple, but it is going to happen. And once that hope is injected, then the time gets spent on the things that they need to do. And the same thing can happen for you. So if you've lost hope, find a way to begin to inject a little bit of that hope back into your life. Work with another person, work with therapists, do the physical exercise, do the other activities that we're going to talk about this week, and begin to move forward a little bit at a time, doing a little bit more each day until you've regained your hope. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of time, be sure to sign up for our Stewardship of Time Tips series by going to inspiredstewardship.com/time or texting 44222 time tips, and that'll get you our best tips on stewarding your time. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.